Is it time to upgrade from the weak stock tie rods to a heavy duty tie rod? Well, SuperATV has you covered with their heavy duty build aluminum tie rods, and today we're going to show you how to get them installed on this RZR Pro XP. So the first thing we're going to be doing is removing our front wheels and tires, as well as our tie rods from our knuckles. So on this machine, it already has SuperATV's heavy duty tie rods installed. If you have your factory tie rod, you'll just remove the nut off the bottom of the tie rod end. If you're running SuperATVs and you're wanting to change over to the billet, all you do is remove your nut off the top of your tie rod. Just going to straighten our cotter pin out and then remove it. We'll come right in here, our socket, remove this nut. Again, this is only if you have SuperATV's tie rods already installed. If you have factory, you'll just be removing the nut off the bottom of the tie rod end. So we'll remove our misalignment bushing here, and then our tie rod. So if you were already using SuperATV tie rods, you can leave this stud in, or you can change it. And if you have stock, you don't have to worry about this step. We're gonna go ahead and change it out. So all we're gonna do is remove that cotter pin like we just did, and then we're gonna take a socket and remove the nut off the bottom of the stud. Now after you do that, what you'll have to do is get two hammers. We're gonna lay one right here, and we're gonna smack that hammer and it's gonna knock that loose. So after you smacked it, it's gonna come loose. Like you said, you can reuse this, or you can discard it and reuse the new one that's gonna come in your kit. We're gonna go ahead and install our new one. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go inside the machine, grab a hold of the steering wheel and steer the wheel so that our inner ball and socket is all the way out to the passenger side, because that's which side we're working on right now. We're gonna head over to the opposite side. We're just gonna come right in here, a pair of side cuts, cut our zip tie off. And if it's factory, it'll have a little clamp. You'll just want to remove that clamp, slide it down the tie rod. Then we're going to move to the inside, which is closest to the rack, and you're going to see you have another zip tie inside of here. All you want to do is just cut that one off, or sometimes you can kind of peel the boot back off of the zip tie. This one's not going to do that, so we're just going to have to slide right in here and cut our zip tie. So there we go. There's our zip tie. Now we're just going to grab our boot, slide it off of the rack and pinion, and slide it all the way down the tie rod, out of the way so that our inner ball and socket is exposed. So there you can see we can get a hold of our inner ball and socket. So we're going to grab our pipe wrench, and we're just going to slide right in here, get our pipe wrench on the inner ball and socket, just like this. We're just going to crack it loose. Once you've got it loose, you should be able to go ahead and thread it out by hand. So once you've got it threaded all the way out, just go ahead and remove it. So the first thing we're going to do on the installation here, we're going to go ahead and grab our inner ball and socket and remove our jam nut all the way off the threads. We'll just set this aside for the time being. Then we're going to get some Loctite, apply it to the threads of the inner ball and socket. You don't need a ton, just a little bit. And we're just going to take the inner ball and socket, get it lined up in the rack, and thread it straight in. Then we're going to grab our pipe wrench and go ahead and fully tighten our inner ball and socket. And you want to crank this inner ball and socket down. You're going to get it in there as tight as you can with your pipe wrench. You definitely don't want this backing out on you on the trail. Now we're going to grab a rack boot. We're going to slide it over the inner ball and socket, over the thread on the inner ball and socket. And you want to get the boot all the way past the threads. So we got it all the way up onto the rack and pinion, and we have it slid up the inner ball and socket to where our little notch here is exposed. So your boot should look like this out here and then all the way up against the rack. And we're gonna take 2 zip ties, which are provided in the kit, and I like to get them started together out here. Makes it a little easier. We'll take it, we'll slide it all the way down the boot. We'll make sure we get on this far lip next to the inner ball and socket. And we want to tighten these down as tight as we can get them. We'll come right here to this lip. So we got them good and tight there. Now we're just going to cut off the excess of our zip ties. So now we're going to take our previously removed jam nut and we're going to thread it all the way up the threads on our inner ball and socket. Now we're going to take our tie rod, and as you can see, it has a slight bend to it on one side. This side will go towards the inside. Just going to thread it up here. I'll thread it about halfway. So we're going to take our jam nut, run it all the way up on our tie rod end here. And this will be left-hand thread. And we'll thread it into our tie rod. Remember, it is left-hand thread. So we'll run it up about halfway as well. Then we're going to grab our tapered stud, our misalignment bushing, our 2 nuts, our washer, and our cotter pins. So here's all of our hardware we're going to need. First, we're going to grab our tapered stud. We're going to put it right down into the knuckle. We're going to take our washer, as well as our bigger of the 2 nuts that we have in the kit. We're going to take the washer, install it to the bottom side of the stud, and then we'll take our nut and thread it on right behind it. We're just going to take our tie rod and get it installed to our tapered stud. Once you get it down there a little bit, I like to kind of apply some downward pressure and kind of wiggle it, and then grab the hub and wiggle until it drops all the way down. And you'll do this until you can get your misalignment bushing in, just like that. And then we're going to take our other nut. We'll go ahead and get our nut installed. Then we're going to take a 22 millimeter on the bottom side and a 19 millimeter wrench up top. We're going to go ahead and fully tighten it. And we're going to take our cotter pin. After our hardware is fully tightened, slide it through and then just bend it away from itself. We'll do that for the top as well as the bottom. Once you've installed your cotter pins, you're just going to repeat all the same steps for the opposite side. And then reinstall your wheels and tires and set the machine on the ground. So now we have the machine sat down on the ground. We have Matthew in here helping us. We're going to be rolling out the machine to ensure that the suspension is settled, and then we're going to be taking some measurements. So now we're going to roll it back and forth about 5 times. One thing to keep in mind, if you do have the ultimate, so the dynamic shocks on your machine, you will want to turn the key on and ensure that it is in comfort mode. That way we can get the suspension settled. So we'll go ahead and do that now. Turn the key on. I already have it set in comfort mode. You guys will want to do that now. And we're just going to roll it back and forth 5 times. All right, so we got it all settled out there. You can kind of push down on the front end. Make sure, as you can see, it's good and settled. We'll grab our steering wheel, turn it to the side a couple times, find a good center. So right there, steering wheel's good and center, and you want to make sure that it stays center as you're taking your measurements and making your adjustments. So now we're going to grab our tape measure. We're going to find the center line of our tire, which every tire will kind of have a little bit of a molding seam in it. that's what you're gonna wanna put your tape measure on. So we're gonna measure from the front of this tire to the front of that tire. So we'll hand Matthew our tape. He's gonna put it on that center line. Then I'm gonna come over here and take a measurement. It looks like we're right at 1409, and we are measuring millimeters. You can use inches, I prefer millimeters. It seems like it's a little bit more exact, a little bit easier for me. And we're gonna do the same exact thing just on the back side of the tire here now. You wanna make sure you're not on the skid plate or on the bottom of the machine. So we're right at 1430. So we do have a little bit of adjusting to do, and that's super easy. With our double adjustable tie rods, we'll just grab the actual tie rod bar and spin it either way depending on if we're towed in or if we're towed out. So we're gonna make our adjustments now. Once you have your toe set, you're just gonna wanna come to the jam nuts, run them all the way up by hand, and then you'll get your wrench and just snug them down. So once you have all your adjustments made, all your jam nuts are fully tightened, that's all there is to it to install SuperATV's heavy-duty billet tie rods on this RZR Pro XP. Be sure to check the description for the link to pick your tie rods up today. Also, while you're there, feel free to drop a comment, like, and subscribe.